Exactly 12 minutes past the top of the hour. Good morning. Thank you so much for keeping it TV47. Time for Morning Cafe with me, Linda Alela, as we take you through what has been happening across the world and where you are. So much excitement after President Uhuru Kenyatta finally eased some restrictions that were put on board of course, the fight against COVID-19. But then again, he comes out very tough, saying that, it is incumbent upon you to ensure that in as much as there's been, an ease of these restrictions, that you take care of yourself, take care of your loved ones. It is a collective responsibility that we all be able, we all are getting to that point whereby we are able to tame the virus. So welcome on board. This is what we'll be looking at as we proceed. What it is that was stopped, the cessation of movement in and out of Nairobi, Mombasa, Mandera, and different counties that, of course, had been considered to be hot spots. So finally, people are able to move out and go visit their very own loved ones. Finally, their loved one can come over. Of course, if you want to go all the way out of Nairobi and back to Nairobi, it all depends on what it is that you've been longing for. And actually, moving around Nairobi this morning, a beehive of activities as Kenyans are excited to go back to some level of normalcy. So we'll be looking at that later on the discussion. Take a look at all this cessation of movement talk that has been ongoing on. What are some of the things that were eased? What are some of the things that were tightened? We'll be discussing that as we proceed. And also remember, it is Saba Day. Later on the broadcast, we'll be having a conversation on, of course, the anniversary of Saba and what it is that we have achieved as a people, or maybe the civil society has achieved in terms of ensuring that democracy is upheld, the rule of law is upheld. So welcome on board. It's always a pleasure to have you joining us. Very important that you interact with us. Hashtag Morning Cafe at Linda_Alela on Twitter, at TV47. And equally, the numbers rolling down on your screen. You can call us or send us a message. We'll be having a guest who will help me go through the newspaper review later on. That is Vivian Tara. She'll be joining me any minute from now, and later we'll also have a session of discussion in regards to equally these issues that I have touched on. So karibu sana. Indeed, we value your feedback. Very important that you drop those comments. We'll get to ask those questions that you want us to ask, and equally answer the ones that you want us to answer. But first things first, let's pick these stories that were prepared by my editorial team. And like I said, the cessation of movement into and out of Nairobi, Mombasa, and Mandera counties has been lifted. President Uhuru Kenyatta, in his 9th address of COVID-19, said that indeed he has started the phase of reopening the country, but this is highly dependent on how well as a people we are going to behave. Let's take a look at that.
In the long-awaited speech, President Uhuru Kenyatta announced the lifting of the cessation of movement in the counties of Nairobi, Mombasa, and Mandera effective Tuesday at 4 a.m.
Today I order and direct that the cessation of movement into and out of the Nairobi metropolitan area, Mombasa County, and Mandera County that is currently in force shall lapse today or at 4 a.m. tomorrow, Tuesday the 7th of July, 2020.
However, in his address, the president extended the nationwide dusk to dawn curfew in what he termed as measures of curbing the spread of COVID-19. The curfew has been extended for 30 more days.
That the nationwide curfew that is currently in force between the hours of 9 p.m. and 4 a.m. daily be and is hereby extended for a further 30 days.
Kenyatta, however, warning Kenyans that the lockdown might be reviewed within 21 days if Kenyans will not adhere to the measures taken. This will also depend on the number of new infections in the country.
Should the situation deteriorate and pose a challenge to our health infrastructure, we will have to revert back to lockdown. In the next 21 days, we shall study patterns of interactions and the spread of the disease. any trends that signal a worsening of the pandemic, we will have no choice but to return to lockdown at zero option.
President Kenyatta urging Kenyans not to travel upcountry for fear of spreading the virus to the elderly population in the rural areas.
Kwa wale ambao watachukua nafasi hii kurudi manyumbani, tuasema pia hiyo ni sawa, lakini ujue warudi kwa nyanya, kwa babu, warudi kwa wazee wenu, warudi kwa familia yako. Jukumu silo la serikali kama wewe utawapelekea huo ugonjwa.
The cessation of movement having been lifted in the 3 counties, now it's the responsibility of Kenyans to ensure whether this disease continues to spread or not. Elizabeth Mutuku, TV47 Nairobi.
And still on matters reopening, Education Cabinet Secretary George Magoha is expected to announce the reopening of learning institutions latest today. Now, this even as President Uhuru Kenyatta has ordered for a phased reopening of worship centers. Mohammed Ali reports.
The Ministry of Education is expected to announce the resumption of the 2020 academic calendar on Tuesday, where Education Cabinet Secretary Professor George Magoha will be meeting stakeholders. President Uhuru Kenyatta, who received a progress update from the Education Sector Committee on COVID-19, ordered the team to come up with a phased opening of learning institutions.
Following consultations with stakeholders in the education sector and cognizant of the surge in the rate of infections across the country, the Ministry of Education shall jointly, with all the stakeholders in the sector, today, but no later than tomorrow, notify the public on the resumption of the 2020 academic calendar for basic education as well as tertiary institutions.
Meanwhile, President Uhuru Kenyatta has ordered for the phased reopening of places of worship for congregational and public worship that will be under strict conformity of the Ministry of Health guidelines.
Places of worship will commence phased reopening for congregational worship and public, that is, individuals can attend worship, in strict conformity with all applicable guidelines and protocols, including the self-regulating guidelines that have been developed by our friends of the Interfaith Council.
The worship places will allow a maximum number of 100 participants and shall not last for more than an hour. Congregants below the age of 13 and those above the age of 58 and persons with underlying conditions will not be allowed to take part in public worship. Religious leaders have welcomed the move by President Uhuru Kenyatta on phased reopening of worship places.
Serikali ingekumbuka sana, na nafikiri it is not too late, wale wenye wanamzungukia rais wamsaidie na akaweze kutoa hazina ya kuwasaidia watumishi wa Mungu.
Mohammed Ali, TV47, Nairobi.
All right, now the COVID-19 pandemic has slowed the economy in the country, with the Ministry of Finance now projecting a 2.5% growth this year. Treasury CS Kuriatani has said that the country is seeking grants to revive the economy.
So I want to launch with the team, the PS. So this is the report you are launching, and as you have been told, we are doing for the second time, and we are running our own. As far as we are concerned, despite the challenges that we are currently facing of COVID, we put systems, policies, programs, and made sure that we raise our own resources by sealing loopholes in where there are situations of revenue leakages. Additionally, We also work with the development partners, most of them on international financial institutions, where we also sometimes access cheap loans, we get grants, we get program-tied aid, and the desire is to really go a long way in implementing the SDGs. But I must admit that we still have a challenge, particularly in areas, vast areas like the ASALs, because of the density and the spread of population. And you know, when you are now extending power from one source, you are carrying it along over a long period of time. And all along, maybe within the 2 points, there could be wastages, there could be heavy expenditures, but from power that is not necessarily utilized. Of course, there are challenges. The revenue performance is not as earlier predicted, is not doing as well. But over time also we are trying to manage by making sure that we realize more resources to address the impact in the health sector, to address the impact among the vulnerable groups, to push on the economy, to increase liquidity and enable the economy to remain sustainable. That's what we are doing. Maybe I can.
Any reviews on predictions for growth? Or we are still there?
But we did. I think that my budget policy, my budget statement to the national.
Now, the move by President Uhuru Kenyatta to reopen Nairobi, Mombasa and Mandera counties has been criticized by a section of Kenyans. The two counties are currently having the largest number of infections, with over 1,000 new cases recorded in the last 1 week.
For the last 3 months, Kenyans in Nairobi, Mombasa and Mandera counties have had to endure the cessation of movement into and out of these 3 counties. President Uhuru Kenyatta's decision to lift the ban of movement, which takes effect Tuesday morning, clearly bringing a sigh of relief for many Kenyans, especially in Mombasa County. However, the decision to reopen Mombasa and Nairobi has been criticized by many, with Nairobi recording a total of 1,057 COVID cases in the last 6 days, Mombasa recording 151 cases. The two counties have recorded the largest number of positive cases in the country. The two counties have been registering triple digits in the last few days. And with the lifting of the cessation of movement, many Kenyans are now expected to head to the villages. A section of critics now saying that the move to lift the ban could prompt the number of infections to multiply.
Kwa wale ambao watachukua nafasi hii kurudi manyumbani, tuasema pia hiyo ni sawa, lakini ujue warudi kwa nyanya, kwa babu, warudi kwa wazee wenu, warudi kwa familia yako. Jukumu silo la serikali kama wewe utawapelekea huo ugonjwa.
But even as Kenyans look forward to inter-county travel, President Uhuru has warned that unnecessary travel to upcountry could be disastrous. Mumbi Chege, TV47.
Now, the 7th of July every year is remembered in a somber mood in the country. It is when the Second Liberation Heroes organized a rally at Kamkunji grounds calling for the repeal of a section of 2A of the Constitution to allow for multi-partyism. But does the Sabasaba Day, as popularly known, still hold high regard as yesteryears? Our reporter Mwangi Minor reports.
The fight for multipartyism in the country took a different turn on 7th of July, the year 1990, when the historic Sabasaba rally took place on these Kamukuji grounds. But not so many people know the history of these grounds. And the people we found here, we sampled some of their responses to know if they know about Sabasaba and the events that occurred on 7th of July 1990. This is what they had to say.
Mira ya watoto fulani ambayo hapo siwezi elezea more. Juu watu kimbizwa wanatia gas. Wanasiasa last ilifanywa pale na Raila akiwa na hama fulani ya red.
Bado mimi ni mgeni kidogo. Nimekuja juzi huku, hii corona imetupatia huku hata kwenda usago hatuendi. Sijui mambo ya Sabasaba sana, mimi mgeni huku.
Wakati ule nilikuwa sifuati mambo ya nini sana, mimi nilikuwa niko shule. Kwa hivyo Sabasaba ikitokea, mimi kwenda tu shule, ilikuwa sifuatana mambo mingi sana. Nikitoka nenda shule pale ni Pumwani.
The historic Kamukunji grounds has now lost its stature. It has been turned into a dumping site, a playing field, and more so a resting place and a place to pass time for the street families. But not everybody who comes to pass time at these grounds is aware of what transpired on 7th July 1990. Meet Mzee Abdallah, who knows too well about the history of Sabasaba.
Na wakati huo kulikuwa na chama inaitwa Ford. Na ndio walikuwa wamepanga kumwangusha Moi, wakaungana. Sasa ile vile Matiba alipigwa, sijui alifanywaje, akapelekwa Ulaya matibabu. Sasa akitoka kule ndio yuaje hivi pale, watu wote wa matatu ambao ni kabila zake ni Wakikuyu wakaandika Matiba for president. Sasa Matiba alipoona hivyo akaona kama ile Kenya, ile Embakasi ndio Kenya nzima.
He remembers the 92nd liberation heroes and the role they played in multipartyism. Abdallah saw it all.
Ilikuwa ni wanataka mabadiliko kuleta ile maana yake wakati huo chama ilikuwa hii moja ambayo ni KANU peke yake. Ilikuwa ni KANU. Unaona? Sasa hii walikuwa wanaleta ile revolution, yani kuna vyama vingi, lakini mambo ya vyama vingi ilikuwako. Isipokuwa ni Jaramogi na Kenyatta ndio waliua. Maana hata prime minister ilikuwako 1961 ukisoma, Kenyatta ndio alikuwa the first prime minister. Sawa? Ile kitu sisi tunajua. Lakini wakija sio walikuja wakagawana ikawa rais na nani? Na rais na makamu wake. Ilikuja hivyo. Na wakati huo kulikuwa ni watu ambao walikuwa wanajua kutengeza nchi. Lakini nao pia walikuja wengine wakauawa kama Bwana Tom Joseph Mboya aliuawa.
For lawyer and a senior citizen Wanyiri Kihoro, he was a victim of Nyayo torture chambers at Nyayo House. He says he's still pursuing his case against the state.
My case is still actually alive and well. Very shortly it will be in the Supreme Court, because there is no way I will let go anything like that one. The kind of treatment I received from my fellow countrymen, and not because I'm a criminal, but because I wanted change in 1986, and what he wanted is our right to speak our mind about our country. And that came in 1991, and we have a multi-party system that is difficult to operate, because the same people who are opposed to it have been at the heart of it in trying to make sure that it doesn't work.
When the Sabasaba rally was being planned, he was among the planners and mobilizers for the rally.
I was working with John Haminwa, an advocate. I was with Paul Muite, and an issue had arisen about whether the meeting that Matiba had called with Rubia is going to take place in Kamukunji. And we had met in Muite's office. And I still remember that day because I'm the one who took the notes. And Matiba, after the meeting, he stood on the staircase in front of Electricity House. There are about 6 stairs on the entrance. And I remember him talking to the man who was in the kiosk in that entrance, saying, I've become very thirsty because I've had a long day and the police won't get off my back. So the mobilization was very difficult, even though also people were more attentive.
He painfully alludes that the country is yet to enjoy the fruits of the second liberation that was fought for so hard, with others losing their lives.
It was on corruption. Just look at that is the only thing that functions in this country. You don't have a budget rate in this country every year about corruption, but it is taking 40% of our national resources at the national level.
Kihoro says confidently the gains of multipartyism only benefits a few who forms political parties for convenience and self-benefit.
Who do not believe in the kind of political parties which you have seen from 1992. In many ways, they are not political parties. They are just limited liability companies. Take over power when campaigning is being done. They don't have an agenda. And the next 4 years, 4.5 years, it is those people who are in power who are supposed to enjoy their gains from the last elections. We are talking about that coalition that came along, and KANU from 1982 up to the year 2002, 10 years, they were in power during the multi-party system. The other parties which were there, like Ford Kenya, there was DP, there was Ford Ashley, they didn't have any power. They were really being manipulated, and the MPs were being manipulated. We had a parliament that had nearly 188 seats.
To him, Sabasaba brings tearful memories of pain and anguish for devoted countrymen who gave their all for what the country enjoys today. Wanyere says he's not aligned to any political party. He says he belongs to the Kenyan independence. Mwangi Maina, TV 47, Nairobi.
Thanks, Mwangi Maina, for that. Remember, that will also be forming basis of our discussion later on the broadcast. That is on the second segment, or the third and the last segment, where we'll be discussing matters lifestyle, and we take a look at the Sabbath Day celebrations right here. So, Nzoia Sugar Company management has lauded President Uhuru Kenyatta's move to ban importation of brown sugar into the country. Mike Kagungu with the details.
Speaking today at the factory's offices in Kandui constituency while unveiling a 51-seater bus that had been donated by the president, Managing Director Michael Wanjala said that the move will improve production of sugar industry in this country.
Mimi nawaahidi tukifika hapo utaanza kupata mshahara mara mbili. Utakuwa unapata your 100% mwezi ikiisha, na hapo around 15 tunaangalia kwa kikapu ni nini tunaweza tukakupea. Kwa hivyo tunapata pesa kwa kusaga miwa. Ndio maana nasema tushikane wote.
Makoha noted that cheap imported sugar by cartels has made factories collapse for lack of market, leaving farmers in despair. The government last week banned importation of brown sugar. Agriculture CS Peter Munya says the move is aimed at cushioning the sugar industry in the country.
Suspended all brown sugar imports into the country with immediate effect until further notice. Suspended pre-shipment approvals and the extension of all sugar import permits with immediate effect until further notice. Prohibited the importation of raw cane with immediate effect. Immediate effect, all applications for brown sugar imports shall be subjected to the sugar import-export regulations.
Nzoia Sugar Managing Director further asked leaders from Sugar Belt to stop politicizing sugar factories' woes and join hands to salvage the industry.
Kuanzia hiyo siku imekuwa ni mchezo ya paka na panya. Kila mtu anasema amengojea Nzoia iuze kwanza. Kila mtu amefunga gala lake. Wanasema acha tugoje Nzoia itasema nini.
According to Wanjala, Nzoia workers have united and are working together to ensure the factory produces 50 tons of sugar per month. Wamangoli also said that farm sugar laws should be put in place to help the factories that are depended on by over 12 million Kenyans.
All licenses, current and the future, for imported sugar. That's not an achievement. I'm wondering our boys who have gone to parliament, who are in Senate, who are elsewhere.
Reporting for TV 47 from Bungoma, I'm Mike Kagwango.
All right, welcome back. It's time for the newspaper review, and Vivienne Tar is on standby joining me. So at least we can, put some sense to equally what has been captured in the newspapers. A majority of stories that revolve around what I have taken you through already, and this is in regards to the reopening of activities, or maybe just the easing of restrictions that were put on board in regards to us dealing with the COVID-19 pandemic. Good morning, Vivienne.
Good morning.
You well?
I'm very well.
Good to have you.
Thank you so much.
All right, and I think the biggest stories of the day across all the newspaper is that we have this morning. We pick the People Daily and Travel Church big winners in partial opening, and here we are. I think that is the biggest thing that we're discussing this morning. What do you make of President Uhuru Kenyatta's address yesterday?
Okay, as a Christian, first of all, the thing that's very evident is that the church doesn't really have a voice in the current governance setup, And we appreciate that the pandemic is real and that restrictions are necessary, but it's laughable to see political meetings taking place with 200 plus people, and then you restrict worship or church services to 100 people. You restrict the ages and you restrict the time. So it's akin to taking away what real worship is. And I think it's what the president did was actually he just washed his hands off that, delegated that very critical and sensitive matter to a committee, meaning from now on, any unpopular decision that comes from the committee is rendered as not from the president. I don't think that was leading from the front. As Christians, we can take it. We can take it and accept that, it's better than nothing, but it's a far cry.
But how much would have the president, what would have the president done, sincerely speaking, if not to delegate? Because you realize there are numerous sectors that require his attention, and we all acknowledge that indeed the church is very much important. For the very first time, I'm getting a person who's bringing a different opinion to this. And in most cases, you'll find that church elders or church leaders would probably argue that, the president wants to bulldoze and do things his own way. So for once, he allows them to proceed and make recommendations that he tasks them to ensure that they are achieved. So sincerely speaking, what else could he have done?
I mean, it's true, and it's a good thing that he delegated some of the tasks. But still, the buck stops with the president. He's the president. It doesn't mean when you present recommendations, he just takes it as they are. You see, there's a reason why he is the leader of the country. The thing is, supermarkets are allowing people in. It's considered an essential service. So as long as you sanitize, your temperature is taken, as long as you exercise social distancing, business can continue. Why can't the same thing be done for churches? Why can't they just say, as long as you take the temperature, people are sanitized, if the room needs to be fumigated or sanitized, every so often, but to restrict the time, I mean, what can you pray or worship in 1 hour?
Oh yeah? Is that not enough to just listen to the word?
You can teach, but there's more to church than just teaching. So
but many would argue, you would still do all this, religious activities even when at home. And I think we've done that. That's how sometimes you find that we have home fellowships and all that.
No, and that's why we are saying we will take what has been given, but it is not the ideal. We would, as Christians, or as a person who attends church service, would have appreciated maybe more efforts like, you can social distance, placement of seats, you can sanitize, you can take temperature checks.
There are churches that hold more than 100 people. They're actually 100 people that has been given on board. So probably he's looking at a scenario where in one day we're going to, as a church, maybe they're going to conduct like 3 services. In the event that your church, holds, a majority of people, so you can find a way where you can strike a balance, get 1 hour the first lot, then probably a relaxation of about 30 minutes. The next slot comes in after another hour,
My question is, actually, Mr. President, pray do tell, how are you going to regulate or enforce, not him, but the church, the 100 person restriction? Are you going to have like someone counting people, and then do congregants now have to make an appointment so that you don't get there and find, oh, they're already 100? I mean, the restrictions on worship are crazy.
Are you faulting the recommendations that were presented?
I think they could have been better. I think they could have been better, and I think maybe not enough consultation or public participation went into it. True, the committee was tasked with it, but we have something called public participation. If really we are a country of 84% Christians, then there should have been more input on this. If we can get into a supermarket, and have very many people in there for the whole day, rotating.
There was like a week or so, or 2, I think, where this was opened for the public to weigh in their sentiments, to present their what would be their recommendations. I don't know what criteria they used, but I can remember very well that the public was called upon to present their recommendations. But that aside, President Uhuru Kenyatta insists that it is individual responsibility. So just how much can we be responsible to see to it that it's okay? We should not wait for the arm of the government. We should not wait for our leaders, our church leaders, to be the people who are going to tell us what it is that we're supposed to do.
I just want to finish on the church issue by saying the current restrictions on worship, it's actually akin to persecution of the church, in my view. Moving on to the issue of individual responsibility, to some extent I agree with him, because this is not something the government can do on its own. Citizens also have to take civic responsibility for ensuring the virus spread is contained, and that means you adhere to the measures that the government has set in place to curb the spread of this virus. And it just takes me back to the whole, when the BBI task force was presenting their report.
Recommendations.
One of the chapters was on national ethos, which really spoke about our attitude and our, belief as Kenyans. So I think it's really important that the president touched on this issue of individual responsibility and civic responsibility, because if we flout the rules, we're essentially hurting ourselves. But that doesn't absolve the government from its role, like to lead this process and see it through to proper, to a proper close. Because we've entrusted the government with our resources and with leadership, we still expect them to lead from the front, not to now, abdicate all responsibility to the citizens.
All right. Well, let's speak. Just remind you of some of the people who've won, who've lost on this one. And travel up country from city is now officially allowed. That's a polite way of saying that the president removed the ban on travel in and out of Nairobi, Mombasa, and Mandera, allowing PSV operators and others to resume trips up country, but on restrictions and remaining adamant that they need to abide by the restrictions that have been given on board by the Ministry of Health. And religious gatherings, places of worship allowed to open, but with strict conditions. They can accommodate only 100 people, elderly and children locked out. And air travel resumption, local flights resume from July the 15th, while international travel to start on August the 1st. And travelers will have to be tested for coronavirus before they proceed to the next level. And education institutions, CS Magoha is set to announce the plans of resumption of learning. This is today, so we eagerly wait for that. We'll be following up on that story by Andrin Kilemi, and we'll update you. Imported second-hand clothes, Ministry of Trade is asked to establish protocols to clear the way for the importation and sale of imported second-hand clothes. And bars and restaurants, President restricts operations of bars to take away only in an effort to enforce the health protocols on social distancing and family routines. As you can see, businesses to continue experiencing disruption after Uhuru extends national 9 p.m. to 4 a.m. curfew by 30 days. And social political gatherings, ban on social gatherings, including political rallies, funerals, and weddings, is set to continue for another 30 days. That's approximately a month. And just coming to the numbers, where we stand at, 181 cases were recorded as of yesterday, and there you go, getting the number of COVID-19 in the country to 8,067 as of now. The people who have recovered stand at 2,414, 164 deaths we have captured, and out of samples that have been tested, 191, 394,000. There you go. And also picking up on this, there's another interesting story here that has been captured on page 2. That is totally different from the matters COVID-19 and President Uhuru Kenyatta's address. And President Uhuru Kenyatta wades into Senate revenue stalemate. Intervention leads to cancellation of planned Speaker's Kamkunji that was expectatory to be highly charged due to differences over counties' cash sharing. And this is something that has been going on for a week approximately right now. Here is the story captured on page 2. And coming to you, Vivian. this continues to be a challenge, especially when it comes to the fact that, we have not really been able to experience the fruits of devolution in totality. And now the aspect of monies that are coming from the national government channels to the counties is becoming a problem, especially on how best these monies can be shared across different counties, knowing very well that the needs are different and the capabilities are equally as different.
Okay, so my take on the cash, sharing crisis is something needs to change. We cannot have monies going into counties, 70% of that amount going into recurrent expenditure and only 30% into, development. The whole idea of counties and devolution was to empower, to share out, resources of the country into the counties so that it can benefit the people who don't necessarily live in the bigger cities, right?
Yeah.
So there's something that needs to be done, and I really think it starts from the entire maybe budgeting process and how we decide how much money is allocated to the counties. As it is right now, I'm aware that they use revenues from 5 years ago, because the catch is they're using revenue that's been audited revenue, and they used from 5 years ago. So you can imagine if this year our budget is 1.something trillion, but we are not basing it on this year's budget. We are basing the money going to the counties on money that was collected 5 years ago, so 2015, 2016. It's ridiculous. Yeah.
All right. Well, we can only wait to see on this particular stalemate what exactly will happen. But yes, it's something that is going on. And in regards to the proposals that are being presented by the Senate, that is Senator Sam Ongeri says that there should be no loser or gainer in whatever formula that is going to be put on board. And he says that they will ensure that there is equity and equality. We can only wait to see what is going to be agreed upon over this, because then, of course, in a way, it has told the activities at the level of the counties. And moving on, like I said,
sorry,
yes?
allow me just to say something on still the issue of cash sharing to the counties.
Okay.
One of the issues we have as a country is the perception of fair distribution of resources.
Yeah.
It is one of the reasons why there's a clamor for power. It is one of the reasons why we've had fights and divisive elections every 5 years, because it is perceived that not every area gets development or gets government support equally or fairly, so to speak. So it is very critical for the Commission on Revenue Authority to see how they can work out a formula that is perceived to be fair by all counties. Yeah.
All right. When you talk about that, then I would want to ask this. Fair is relative in this case, right?
Yeah.
Because then you cannot say that they will all get equal amounts based on the capabilities and the needs that are down there, right?
The issue is not equal.
Yeah.
The issue is perception of fairness, because the truth is not all counties have the same resources or the same population or the same infrastructure. So you cannot blanketly say every county will get, 200 million, for example. Nairobi County is very different from Mombasa, is very different from Nakuru, but the counties and the people living in those counties need to feel that they have been considered fairly as citizens of Kenya. Yeah.
How fair that is going to be is a question of wait and see. And I mean, in what has made the better part of course, the newspapers today, still on the president's address, like we had said earlier on, it's all up to you. President Uhuru Kenyatta tells Kenyans that, in the event that they want, for us to proceed and reopen, of course, he has declared the reopening and stay open. We can only behave, so at least we're able to tame the virus. If we do not, then we might be as well taken back to that point of a lockdown. And politics will always find its way on some of these key issues that we are talking about. And on President Uhuru Kenyatta's address, some people arguing that it was not right for Deputy President William Ruto to keep off again as head of state speaks to the nation. I mean, the politics of Jubilee is just out of this world, Vivian.
So now we have Jubilee Asili, quote unquote,
Yeah.
and we have the Jubilee as we know it. I think it's interesting that the deputy president would stay away.
Yeah.
Interestingly, before, prior to 2020, 2019, the fallout that's now public, I mean, these guys would show up in matching ties, hand in hand, just speaking of the very close chemistry and working relationship they had. So it's very clear now that they have an acrimonious working relationship. You can see from the body language, you can see just from how they interact when they're in public together. It's no longer a secret. So I'm not surprised that the deputy president did not show up. Why would he endorse, the president when there seems to be issues regarding their working relationships? A couple of days ago, the deputy president is on record saying, he's asking church leaders and just the country to pray for him because the people, his people and anybody, his allies, people who are close to him are seemingly being targeted. So it means he's already speaking and saying he doesn't like what is going on. He may not have said it in those exact words, but you can pick from his sentiments that he shares in public. Yeah.
All right, well, that aside, I think it's more or less of how, of course, to reopen in most of the pages that we're talking about. Nairobi residents also commend President Uhuru Kenyatta move to lift the order. By the way, I haven't gotten your opinion on this. Was it a good move, looking at the projections that we're getting? I mean, since we started recording the very first case, we've been shooting up. The numbers have been surging by the day. So is this a good move by the president?
I think it's a good move. The lifting of the cessation order was a good move. First of all, I think we need to be cognizant of the fact that more and more people are being tested means definitely the numbers testing positive will be on the rise. That should not come as a surprise. However, we need to get to the place where we realize that this is not a disease that will just quietly go away. We need to get to a place where we are able and willing to accept that we must live with it. We must find a new way of doing things that enables us to, learn, work, play coexist basically with the virus in place, because lives cannot stop. Businesses have closed, people have lost jobs. When you look at the deaths caused by malaria, HIV, and non-communicable diseases, you cannot compare them to the 140 or so of COVID fatalities that we've had over the last 3-4 months. It's ridiculous that we locked a whole, economy and country.
And we still are.
Yeah. Okay, granted that when it started, nobody knew how to handle it and nobody knew how bad it would be. And so it was important to be cautious. But once we could see a clear direction of how things were going, I think we would have put different measures in place. Yeah.
All right. Well, that's interesting.
But I definitely support the opening of the economy and lifting of the cessation orders from the counties of Nairobi and Mombasa.
And I think the cartoon edition also on the People Daily supports, or probably speaks volumes of, how indeed the economy had suffered, the blow continues to suffer. We'll be looking at that. But then again, like I said, the stories are all about the COVID-19 panic over possible contact of MP's dead spouse. Remember the woman rep who lost their husband, of course, due to COVID-19. Talks are here that panic has gripped Mogosho town, Baringo County, after it emerged that the husband of woman rep Gladwell Cheruiyot, who allegedly succumbed to COVID-19 on Saturday, had spent considerable amounts of time in the area recently. So that is something that, of course, is left for the burden, or is a burden to the government or the Ministry of Health, especially on the aspect of contact tracing and all that. And still also noting on the numbers that we've hit the 8,000 mark, even as the lift on the cessation is ongoing and the order is out here. We ask whether we are safe or not. Microbiologists explain corona test variances. And here we are. I think the biggest challenge that these people face is first to advise the government on the ways forward, and most importantly, try to crack their brains on how best we can get a vaccine, if not remedy in totality. And let's just pick the cartoon edition as we lock out on the newspaper review. You can see the cartoon edition.
Not very clearly.
Are you able to see that? I think it should be on your screen, yes. I will keep readjusting it depending with how COVID-19 behaves. Those are the words of the president, I'd want to assume, and you can easily see what the economy is going through in terms of the adjustments that are happening. So right now, at least some ease in a way, but just for how long?
Well, that's a good question. We don't know for how long, but the thing that's clear is the economy has been adversely affected, and businesses and individuals need support. I know there's some 3 billion that's been earmarked for SMEs and for credit guarantee for SMEs. But what I'd like to say is the government needs to remember to ring fence some of these funds for youth-owned businesses, for women-owned businesses, so that when we talk SMEs, it doesn't just go to the traditional SMEs that the government knows. There's micro, there's small, there's medium, and there needs to be a clear demarcation of how much of these funds will go to each of these groups of people, including youth and women and the disadvantaged groups. There was also, when we're talking about the issue of reopening the economy, there was the issue of air travel expected to resume from 15th July. I think that's really, really good. Airlines have been one of the most really badly affected businesses, and it's a very welcome move from the president that they will get back to business. Yeah.
All right, and speaking of which, let's pick some in a minute or so. Just take a look at some of the reactions that we had on Twitter. Hashtag Uhuru Cares, different hashtags, President Uhuru Kenyatta, and of course hashtag reopening, all ongoing. And the beauty of it is that Kenyans have received this so well, and they've also looked at what President Uhuru Kenyatta has said in terms of us being, personally responsible, and they have embraced that, which is a good thing, and I think it's commendable. If at all we'd want to be successful on this one, Kiari James KE says that for those who are reopening their businesses, anybody in your premises should wear a mask. It's not the same anymore. We have to be responsible as Kenyans. Hashtag Uhuru Cares. I think that's a good one right there. And different reactions in regards to the reopening. Let's take a look at some of these reactions that are coming on board. So much so of them. These ones are this morning. And here we are, ladies and gentlemen, we now have the freedom to move from country to county. I can't call it freedom if after 2 weeks we go to another total lockdown. Uhai wako, jukumu lako. So it's important that we are all responsible, and of course just painting a picture of the recycling or getting us to a point whereby we'll have to go back to this particular point in the event that we are not careful at all. So yeah, here we are. Okay, well, Felix Olela has a different, reaction. He says Borojo. I don't know how. Well, maybe just because he thinks that maybe we're going to get to a point whereby we'll have to go back to there. But then again, we do not want such a scenario. And yes, leaders from Western region. I don't know. Well, the Western region. I think I need to ask you something about the Western region.
The elusive Nation unity.
Yes.
Yes, what's the question?
No, well, just technically, what do you make of it? Well, there's someone who's reacting to them, leaders from Western region.
Honestly,
stay safe. I think that, they're being called to stay safe, or being called on to stay safe because the numerous meetings that they've been holding over the weekend. Yes.
It's very interesting. I think, first of all, the two leaders, ANC and Ford Kenya.
Yeah.
It is good that they are supporting each other, but they need to be honest with each other, because when the rubber meets the road and one of them needs to run for presidency, I really doubt if the other person would back, his compatriot and agree to be the deputy. And when you look at it keenly, really, in terms of representation, in terms of legislators and elected representatives who've been elected to county assemblies and national assemblies, how much clout do the two parties have? I think Ford Kenya has like maybe 8 MPs, ANC maybe 12, I'm not sure of the exact number, but collectively, I think elected there are about 20 or not more than 25 in a country that has 290 elected members of parliament. That just goes to show you the level of influence that they have. So for them to say that they have, national support and to purport to be, the spokespeople and the ones who carry the heart and aspirations of the Mulembe nation, I think is a fallacy. They really need to be honest with themselves and look at the reality of it. It's one thing to want to be the leader and the spokesperson.
Right.
It's another thing to actually be, you know, based on your level of influence, based on the number of representatives you have elected, you know, and based on your even ability to mobilize resources and people.
Yeah.
So Mulembe Nation unity, for now, I don't see it happening unless there's a clear chance of like a presidential candidate, and I don't see any of them right now being a potential. Maybe in the next 5, 7 to 10 years, they will have a potential candidate that they can rally around. For now, the divisions are between the sub-tribes, it's just too much. The interests are varied. So it's very different from, you know, Bukusu to support Marachi or, you know, Maragoli. The differences are too varied right now. Yeah.
Oh, all right, there you go. Great opinion right there. Different one from, of course, the numerous ones that we've had before. Yes, the Mulembe unity, as elusive as it has always been. And on the last tweet, at Musa Walaikipia says, vaa barakoa na uwache ujeuri, utaishi siku nyingi, duniani maisha hayapendi ujeuri na kiburi. There you go. And I think I'll wind up on the tweets. We'll be coming back with what is happening on the roads as we cross over to the discussion on matters current affairs after this break.
Hello viewers, how are you? And karibu sana to the Throwdown. My name is Hamadi Murila, welcoming you to TV47. Hello viewers, how are you? And karibu sana to the Throwdown. My name is Hamadi Murila, welcoming you to TV47. Today being Sunday, you know we have so much to do. We are going to do cooking, but I have a giveaway for you, our viewers, those guys that have been watching us ever since the show started. But I'm not going to take you back. We have a Meko for you to win. You can use that in your house. You can travel with it to picnics or wherever you wish to go to. Yeah, so you can use this Meko in so many other ways, and you can get it in a very simple way. You just need to answer one question. I think you watched I hope actually that you watched our show last week. I just want you to tell me, what did we prepare last week and what were the ingredients? You can send an SMS to 22047. You can do a small video and maybe of what you prepared. You can be doing the mail or whatever you can do, provided you show us what we prepared and the ingredients, and tag us on our social media handles on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter as well. So I'm Meko for you guys. Just a very simple question. What did you prepare last week and what were the ingredients? Try that out and see who's going to take this away. We are also going to announce the winner in our next show, probably, so that you can get to know who has been following this show from the day one and what we have been doing all along. So today we want to do something very tasty for your house. When I say for your house, I mean for everyone in that house, your children, anyone that can be found in that household at any particular time. And it's very easy. You want to do spicy potatoes. These potatoes are going to be done in a very nice way so that they're not just potatoes, but potato wedges. So I'm going to chop them in a way that you can all see. Potato wedges, first of all, are not prepared like normal chips. Some people normally chop them in a way that they end up looking like chips. They're not supposed to be chips. Potato wedges, you realize the shapes are a little bit bigger and they're more yummier than the chips. So we're going to just slice like a whole life-size potato. I'm going to do this. So I think you can see just 4. I'm just doing this, just 4 pieces from one large potato. I'm going to do that. So we are done chopping the potatoes into wedges size. I think you can just have a look and see. They're not like chips. These are the best sizes for wedges. So to prepare these spicy wedges, we are going to have we have rosemary here. We have cubes, and then we have chili powder. We have turmeric here, which we're going to use to boil, maybe to blanch them. And then we also have curry powder and we have black pepper. And then the best of it all, we have salt, which is going to give us the taste that we need. So I'm going to take this, then put them into a cooking pot like this one, like that. It has some water. Make sure that you have done your washing well. Then after that, I'm going to introduce our very first spice, which is supposed to boil together with the... So I'll do this, then I can just put it here. As it boils, it will mix up. Then I'm going to turn on the cooker. So I'm going to boil this for about 10 minutes. Between 10 to 15 minutes, and then we are going to now to proceed with the rest of the procedure. Stay tuned. So guys, we are done. So we are going to drain, we are draining them from the water that we used to boil with. Remember, they're not supposed to be overcooked, they're just supposed to be a little crunchy. I think we're done. There's nothing else remaining there. So we want to marinate this in a nice mix of the other spices. You put this off, and then you use your meat to make sure that you put this on the side because you want to use this section. We now want to proceed to adding the other spices. We are going to start with salt. So we are going to put a teaspoon of salt, like that. And then after that, I'm going to put this black pepper is 1 tablespoon of black pepper. Then we have curry powder. Then you have rosemary. Each of them are actually a tablespoon. So we are going to do this. We mix them well, like this. Then you're going to add the chili powder. To make them spicy. Sorry. Like that. So as that happens, we're going to give them a few minutes. We're going to cover this bowl. And then we give them a few minutes. Hello viewers, how are you? And karibu sana to the throwdown. My name is Hamadi Murela, welcoming you to TV47. Today being Sunday, you know we have so much to do. We are going to do cooking, but I have a giveaway for you, our viewers, those guys that have been watching us.
Next to me is an engineer and political line. Of this, especially now that we know very well that there's been a crunch and a pinch on the economy. A sigh of relief?
Huge. I've said before that what the president was facing is a moral dilemma, because you either, and allow me to say this, we were either going to die because of hunger, because we had no source of income, or we are going to die of COVID if we infect each other. So really, it's a moral dilemma, which is a better evil.
I'll use the president's words. What was he saying yesterday? He's been juggling on whether to save the economy or save the lives of the people. And according to him, we can always resuscitate an economy that is dwindling, but we cannot revive lives.
For me, the key problem from the beginning was the fact that it was half-heartedly done. In terms of when this situation came up, we allowed people from the epicenter to come into the country. Then when we started to lock down, we locked down in a jokingly way. I've told you that these whole barriers between Nairobi and the rest were just money collection units for the police officers, and I have no apologies in saying that. Anybody could get through with 200-300 shillings. Right. You saw the last week the police actually vindicated me by going to show that actually that was happening. And so you either needed to have a full lockdown or nothing at all. Right. And what we had with the jocular one. So what happened is that we messed our economy. We messed our economy in the process of pretending to prevent COVID. Because COVID, you notice the infections are still going up. We are 300. And for me, the most interesting thing was to lock down the country at 7 cases and open the country at 8,000 cases.
And lockdown in totality, could we have sustained that even as we take a look at whether indeed it's a reprieve?
Well, first and foremost, I want to say that the president did something wrong in opening the economy, because as he has said, how can we close the economy at 1 and open it at 8,000 shillings? What I thought yesterday is that the president was pushed to open the economy. Every Kenyan,
by every other Kenyan,
yes, every other Kenyan was saying, let's open the economy. And I was wondering why Kenyans are talking about opening the economy when the numbers are going up. Are Kenyans not Kenyans in Kenya? Are they not seeing that the numbers are going up? Because Kenyans were pushing fast for curfew to be lifted.
Right.
So that they can go for Dunda. These youngsters in whatever. They want the bars to be opened. They want the economy to be opened. They want Nairobi to be opened. The president had to make a political move.
Yeah.
What I can say yesterday,
that was a political move?
was a political move to appease the Kenyans who were agitating for the opening of the economy.
Yeah.
You know, and but the president cautioned. He said, let us look at the decisions I've made after 21 days. If numbers are going to go up, then we're going to lock down the economy. But the question is, are they true numbers?
Kemri projected 2 point something million?
If someone gets 300 cases and you open the economy immediately, are you really serious about it? Are you telling us the truth? Kemri did their samples.
Yes.
And they came up with a model. They said close to 5% of Kenyans, or 10%? Yes, close to 5% of Kenyans have it. Some 2.5 million people. Those are samples from Kemri, which I think is going to vindicate the government.
All right.
With their numbers, with their huge numbers.
Okay. Oh, okay.
Yes.
But not as huge as what Kemri has brought on. But anyway, gentlemen, let's first of all take a look at some 2, 3.
I just like to make a comment
that
I'm a complete contrary opinion. And you remember 2-3 weeks ago, I've been on this.
Yes, you've been here. You maintain that it's important to reopen.
It is very important to open the economy. The damn thing is a viral disease. The only way to fight with the viral disease, there's not a single viral infection that has treatment. It's a fact. People take take care of the person who is ailing. And for this virus to be defeated, we must all become infected so that we have hard immunity.
Right.
When the German Chancellor Merkel said this in March, she was lambasted.
Right.
Because she said, I'm not closing this country because I want us to get our herd immunity quicker.
Right.
Let's 80% of us being muted. So you don't kill people with fear. Let people take care of themselves. Let people take care of themselves.
Let's see the worst that can happen. All right. Looking at the worst that can happen, gentlemen, upon the president's address, there were fair share of reactions, different reactions. For instance, also on matters politics. Politics at some point in time played out. We have touched on that in the morning. But we also had reactions from Kenyans. I've looked at some of them on Twitter. But we also have some, that my team had prepared in terms of the memes, and you just look at some of the things that Kenyans say and you lie. And then, so this is 2NK and shuttle drivers going to look for their vehicles. It is interesting. Yeah, mulizitupa wapi sasa kama zikoko kwa nini, man. Here we go. We're going to take that step. Oh, kunywa pewa tano. Pewa ngapi, Mr. President? It is umefanya kitu ya maana sana namna gani? What else? May the highest fare send a win. There you go. Always in troubles. So anyone below 13 years and above, all right, we're losing that. Yes, are not allowed in places of worship. Oh no.
Yes.
Raila Odinga,
yeah.
Francis Atwoli, yes. Stephen Kalonzo Musyoka, David Murathe, Moses Wetangula, Wycliffe Oparanya, Musalia Mudavadi, Uhuru Kenyatta, William Ruto.
William
Ruto is safe, eh?
Oh
yeah.
The only one.
Man, yeah, we've all seen how much is so much into the church affairs and all that. We have so much, but let's just react on those ones. I mean, Kenyans in a way were excited. Yes. I don't know why you were not excited in this case.
I was not, because I have watched international news and I've seen people burying their loved ones like something else. Instead of digging the grave the normal way, people are using excavators. And they are digging graves in thousands.
Yeah.
And families are given only 1 minute to have time with their dead. Just 1 minute to look at them before they are buried.
Edgar, it's a catch-22. Why we're saying it's a catch-22, we'll pick what Alex had said earlier on. I mean, you can as well say this. If you'd bury people out of COVID-19, okay, if you reopen, then you would
reduce the number of people you'll bury because of the levels of poverty, the lack of sustainability in terms of of course what the economy is going through right now. So when we're talking about the debts, like it's almost like it's a gamble.
It's a gamble as to what is worse than the other. And I think when people die, you bury them. But when people fall back to poverty, you bury them over a long time.
All right.
So for me, I would rather we get out there.
Yeah.
We have what you call the guidelines that are being given by Ministry of Health, that are being given by the World Health Organization. And by the way, no one understands this disease, for your information, because even World Health Organization have been shifting the goalpost in terms of that. We've heard that the huge deaths in New York and the rest of the places that were broadcast so heavily in the month of March and April into a point where 2,000 people are dying in a day. We discovered that those people are not necessarily COVID. They had other issues that were causing them, but they were putting them there to bump up the numbers. And our neighbors, Tanzania, they're free. Would be expecting the body to be collected on the streets. And initially there were videos that were coming around showing that people are dying in large numbers and dropping in the streets.
Do you think they were lies?
My dear, it's the same video 3 videos that was circulated for more than 2 months.
Okay.
Which means it's a lie.
It's a lie. All right, but you come
propaganda.
You bring on board a very important thing. And I think, yes, we can say, well, we have reopened, but like you rightfully put it, with restrictions, let's abide by what the Ministry of Health has given us guidelines. But just how disciplined are we? How able are we to be able to do this?
Now, we don't have to be treated like children. That because we are not responsible, then we have to be forced to be locked down. I mean, I'm talking to Kenyans.
Yeah.
Let's use our common sense. If the government has recommended a meter, stay a meter away from each other. We've discovered that a lot of people can do their work from home. And this morning I was very impressed that I thought today I'll be caught up by a huge jam when coming. And I've realized Kenyans have moved on. People have changed their way of doing it. People are not rushing to come into town to be able to come to work. Let's follow those guidelines. Let's use our common sense and follow those guidelines. Because I would rather we take care of ourselves than die of depression.
All right, okay. Coming to you, I still would want to linger on that point of why it is that you feel like this wasn't the right move. The president highlighted very well that previously, when he was making that address in June, he noted that there were some irreducible minimums that were supposed to be achieved, yeah? We have not been able to achieve this in totality, but he acknowledges that we have made steps based on the recommendations that have been presented by different stakeholders. So why is it that you feel like it was a bad move? And he acknowledges that the little that we have done is good enough to be able to sustain us.
Well, Linda, we've been given a lot of money by the international community.
Yeah.
And they have spent almost 500 billion in the country, more than close to $1 trillion in the country. Where is the money? Why can't Kenya be locked for 2 weeks or 3 weeks? Because this virus has been known to spend its 3 weeks.
That is to say, you want the monies that were given as donations to be used to take care of Kenyans.
Well, it was done poorly, and it was done for the rich.
Right.
And I'll tell you this: people who have companies have access to stimulus loans. When you go to the bank and you ask for money, you will be given the stimulus money. Who will be able to go to the bank to get the money to pay the employees who are sleeping at home, and later you will now pay back the money? You know, the government spend its money in a wrong manner.
Okay.
It should have targeted people in closed door, whatever, in the houses, feed these people for 2 weeks, open the economy. You know, but right now we are playing with ourselves and listening to what Kenyans are doing. Look at how Kenyans are happy. Paka wanapea president.
But it's because they're the people who are suffering. Look at this scenario.
Exactly.
You say that the government has spent the money, you know, in an inappropriate way, which is something that you would acknowledge that, you know, while they have spent it that way, they are not suffering as the common mwananchi is suffering. Hence the push, hence the need, hence the desire to proceed and, you know, just reopen, just ease at least, Mr. President, for us.
Kenyans are on their own, by the way. The decision makers are making the decisions out of their own selfish interest.
Yeah. You can always come in, but don't
These people should have made right decisions for Kenyans. Sometimes we think that the people who are driving the country are bright enough to drive us. These people might kill us, by the way.
And speaking of which, I had Vivian in the morning here, and Vivian sort of said that, the president gave us that I don't care attitude, like I've left it for you people to figure it out. Is it the case?
It's not really that. And I'd like to tell my friend that the leaders that we have are a sampling of us.
Okay.
So if you think they are thick, they are thick. If you think they are stupid, they are stupid.
Right,
If you think they don't care, we don't care.
Yeah.
And it shows top to bottom. When there was a total lockdown, as a matter of fact, Linda, for information, the lockdown was for the poor.
Yeah.
The rich moved wherever they want to move. We had the Atuoli moving all the members of the nation going to Kajiado, crossing the roadblocks and all that. We've seen other leaders attending funerals all over this country, attending seminars and meetings and whatever they have. We've had the Minister of Health going to Dhaya to hold a press conference where the distancing of the people that were around him, almost 30-40 people, was less than half a meter.
Okay.
They were crowding around him. Which means that the lockdown was really for the hoi polloi. And it was only important for the president to say, look, if the leaders, so-called leaders, have been free to move around and to do whatever they have to do, why would I hold back the hoi polloi? I mean, are they children of lesser God? And I think it's a good decision that he did to open up. You notice I question a lot of things that he does, but in this case he had no option.
He had no option.
He had to open up this country.
Well,
as a matter of fact, this country opened up 2-3 months ago.
And now that brings me
long
to this
time
question.
ago.
There
was no lockdown. Those barriers were poll stations for money collection for the police officers. And I have no apologies to say that. We have been vindicated by that being seen to be so. And so we have a responsibility to do whatever we have to do to observe the Ministry of Health guidelines. We need to go to Tanzania and find out why are they not being affected. In fact, one of the beautiful memes that came through was Tanzanians making joke of us and saying maybe our neighbors are cursed because the country is called Kenya and the president is called Kenyatta.
Well, interesting views right there. But you see, this is now the question on board. And what he says here is that even before, we've not been able to maintain, what have restrictions that were put on board or were given, So we have reopened, and President Uhuru Kenyatta reiterates that it's important that you abide by the restrictions that have been given on board. So, are there restrictions at all? Are we toying around with ourselves? Are we lying to ourselves? Are we going to be able to manage some of these things? Again, I quote Vivian in the morning, says that, in as much as you're telling the churches to proceed and do this, who is going to be there to ensure that, 100 people get into church and, they are below and above and all these things?
Now, Linda, the president himself opened a can of worms when he was starting this. He himself led political meetings in State House and made and overturned decisions made by parties and made sure that the country was politically charged during a COVID-19. He is the one who ran the country into this. And people would follow their leader. A choir is not higher than the choir master. We're all following the leader of the nation. And the leaders whom we choose ourselves, the MPs, the Atuolis, the people who have been having meetings. Now, what will a local mwananchi do in such a case where we have people floating the rules and those who want us to keep the rules? They should be leading by examples. In a matter of the churches, I think when it comes to our churches, we are better and we can manage ourselves. And there was a task force that was formed by Matiang'i, and there's been a follow-up. I saw some green good books written yesterday being handed over to the president or something about the churches. Very colorful books. And our friends from the church contributed, the pastors contributed, and I think we are going to follow it. We as the local wananchi, we tend to follow rules so much.
Right.
But when we see our president having a political meeting in State House,
we'll be all out next day.
I am going to hold mine.
Oops.
Yeah.
All right, that's interesting. Okay, well, speaking of which now, that we're talking about the politics of the nation, the president says that we're not going to have the politics. Of course, this is just within the measures that are supposed to be put on board. But just how disciplined our politicians are, or are our politicians not to hold some of these political meetings, now that we're talking about the BBI and the steam that is ongoing? And the Mulembe nation.
I keep thinking and imagining sometimes that our leaders live in Mars and we live on Earth.
Yeah.
So that their sense of reality is totally different.
Yeah.
One thing is, when you talk about 100 people attending every service, you're thinking, Jesus Christ, how many churches do we have?
Very many.
And who will come and police that only 100 people are there?
Tricky.
If a church has a following of about, for argument's sake, go to Sitam in Nairobi. Look at 100 people seated in that auditorium that they have built.
Right.
You're joking. Go to Karen, Sitam, go to Moja Deliverance Church and look at the size of that church. And you're telling them to have 100 members as the church of Jesus Christ, blah, 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 in Kangware.
No children.
Oh, come on.
It is almost impossible. Why do you say it's
No,
impossible?
I'm saying the reality would say ensure that you have safe distancing. 100 people in Sitam, the hall would be empty.
They can do 100 in different sessions.
They can do 100 in Sitam. What I'm saying, there is enough space for more than 100.
More than 100, okay.
And they keep their social distancing.
Okay.
You know, this is a scientific thing. It's not a Jameson thing. It's a scientific thing.
Right.
That you calculate that I need how many people in this church if I have to keep them 1 meter apart. And because when you make such rules that don't make sense, then people ignore them. They make nonsense of them.
They go against
For me, last week, the reflection of us and our thinking was, I went to a place we were having a small meeting, and it is in a pub. And I saw around 3 o'clock, men came in and women, and each sat, you know those markings that you have in the pub, 1 meter away from each other. But I can assure you by 6 o'clock, they were hugging.
Oh no!
So you look at that situation and say, oh yeah, sometimes even the government gets a bit drunk with his own power and does this kind of.
And speaking of which, we are waiting for Mago. And I mean, sad to speak, was to say there's been a lot of confusion, especially on matters education, and well, it is justified in a way because I mean the entire global community is as confused. But in this case, we are expecting a report as of today on what, of course, directions we're going to take in reopening of schools. But one thing is for sure, teachers must test in the event that we're reopening schools. What do you make of that? How possible and how, I mean...
First, I'm so worried that Magoha is going to call us back to school because the president has tried to open the country.
Oh, yeah?
I'm worried that they might make a decision that will lean to try to open schools. But I don't know how prepared our schools are. Sorry, I'm lucky to have gone to a primary school that is not congested. But I've seen schools that hold up to 1,000 kids in an acre.
Yeah.
You see? So we live here in Nairobi. We're here in Nairobi where we tend to see life differently. There are places which don't experience these things the way we experience them. Magoha may lean towards the opening to please the Kenyans and to please my friend.
Is this what you want for schools to reopen?
My friend, the economy must open.
Okay.
Hold on. I keep hearing this argument about every teacher has to be tested.
Yes.
What are you talking about? Why not every doctor? Why not every citizen? 47 million of us. What are you talking about?
Okay.
There are 350,000 teachers in this country. Okay?
Yeah.
It has taken us 4 months to test 150,000 people. How long will it take us to test 350,000 teachers across this country.
Edgar, do the math.
Do the math. Across this country. No, it's not
It is
simple.
almost impossible.
It's not
rocket
simple
science.
maths.
Yeah.
Because you are doing this testing now on localized area. When you're talking about teachers, you're talking about teachers in my village in Kama, in Loitokitok.
Yeah.
You're talking teachers in some place in Londiani. You're talking about teachers in Bura, in Hola, northeastern Kenya. So it's an year's job.
And the irony of testing teachers and failing to test students.
Exactly. The students are how many? 8 million?
Millions and millions.
8 million?
Yes.
You've tested 150,000 in 4 months, and you want to test 8 million? You're a joker. But life must go on.
Okay.
Now I keep hearing this whole business of that we need fewer students in a class. They need to be whatever. Yes. Where do you guys live? Where do you guys live? Today we have a very sad situation, Linda.
Yeah.
Because I deal with I talk to young people and I speak in schools. We have boys' schools or girls' schools where people share beds.
Yes.
They share beds.
Yeah, that's sad.
What nonsense are you talking about that you're going to all these nice things that you're talking about? Yet, and this is a sad thing.
Yeah.
You the CS for education, you're not saying what the ministry is doing to us. I don't know any one of you have seen the briefing that the governor of New York was giving during when he was doing this. Before the economy of the US was forcibly opened by the death of George Floyd.
Right.
And people went to the streets.
Without
and people had no masks.
No social distance.
No social distancing.
Yeah.
And the numbers dropped.
Okay.
Oh, the numbers dropped.
Numbers dropped.
All right.
Now,
completely.
Linda, I would want to say that maybe our country is driven by people who are guessing. Because
isn't the global community guessing as well?
The whole global community is guessing on this coronavirus. My friend, no one knows.
Yeah, true.
Today they say wear a mask. Tomorrow they tell you no, don't wear a mask. Today they tell you wear a mask if you're sick and if you're not sick. The next day they tell you that the virus are airborne for 8 hours. The next time they tell you it's only 2 minutes.
Can we just admit that we don't know what we are doing to Kenyans?
Yeah.
And can we just tell them the truth that I want to open, but I don't want to open? So can we all decide? But our leaders thinking that if we tell them the truth, they are going to remove us from office. You know, these people should tell us the truth because it is unrealistic to deal with 8 million children, 8 million heads, 8 million testing, 350,000 teachers. It is unrealistic. So our leaders should just tell us that there's no direction for this. There's no direction, and we should just all go home.
Let's figure out.
Just all go home.
Oh,
yeah.
But now home where? Some of us do not have homes because the landlords have thrown you out.
Linda, we have to be pragmatic and say that this is not the first time that these kind of things have happened. We have had the Spanish flu in just the other day, 1918. We had the plagues. And we read about them in history. And that's why the Bible says there's nothing new under the sun. Everything happens. Let's open up. Let's go back to work. Let's do what we have to do. Let's observe the guidelines. We have them. All of us now have them on the TV and everywhere else. We can't be holed up longer. Go to Tanzania. The other day I saw a clip of John Pombe Magufuli on the streets of Dar es Salaam, seated with the Kawatungu people. Who sit around Kawatungu. And he was buying everybody, and he was happy.
And they're okay with that.
Yeah, okay.
Well,
we had rumors about their leaders who had died of COVID-19.
Yeah, but
they are still alive. I mean, it was all propaganda.
Don't you suppose it's probably more of a case of numerous asymptomatic cases there?
Of course, we have 2.7 million in Kenya.
Okay.
Hold on. We have 2.7 million people in Kenya,
as projected
by Cambridge. It's a simple statistical analysis that you can also do yourself. In every testing that they do, they're getting between 3 and 6% positive. random testing.
And how many people are exposed out
So
here?
which means
Contact.
you just extrapolate that.
Right.
My numbers are even higher than 2.7 million, but let's go with 2.7 million. We are 2.7 million who over time are developing their own immunity. And I think medical people need to come and tell us some of these things, that how this immunity is developed. But let me say this for the sake of the listener. I'm not saying that we belittle this situation. The situation is there. COVID is there. There are people who keep saying that there is no COVID. COVID is there. And we need to take care of ourselves. We need to follow the guidelines that we have been given so that we can protect ourselves against infections. Just like we do with HIV/AIDS. We know what to do not to get HIV/AIDS. We know what to do not to get malaria. So we need to protect ourselves. Because talking to a doctor this last 1 week, he told me that he wishes that the government would actually have people who give proper reporting, especially during the briefing, to even give the number of people who are in hospital, who are in ICU. Because we have numerous people. His estimate would be 30, 40, 50 people in various hospitals in Nairobi in ICU because of COVID, and people who are admitted because of COVID isolation wards in the hospitals. I wish they could go around and say that we have so many here, we have so many here, so that people can realize this is a real, real problem.
Why is it that they're not doing that? I mean, we still are in the dark. Yes, President Uhuru Kenyatta said that, please don't take this as a joke. And a majority of people will tell you that also. But why is it that we're still stigmatizing this? Why is it that we still are not getting clear pictures of what exactly is on ground, such that it is casting doubts?
Press statements are political statements meant to make names for people.
Oops.
So that you can receive those awards. Who received the award again? Out of the ministry.
Out of the ministry of
Dr. Amoth.
Yes.
Yes. I can say that Dr. Amoth received an award because we now know him.
And also the CS was celebrated globally the first times,
Yes.
He was all over newspaper across the globe.
Very
and how
true.
he's handling the addresses.
Now, these press conferences are more than Kagwe is our kingpin for the Mount Kenya.
Oh yeah?
Because he has been handling this one like this. Super CS, things like those ones. Who is Dr. Mwangangi? Who is this other one? So they've
actually been reading so much into what has been happening between Kagwe and CS Fred Matiang'i again.
Yes.
In terms of the movements that they've been making.
Who is who now in the country?
Are they trying to make inroads or what?
As Alex said, if we were sincere in this and we get proper reporting from uninterested people, sometimes I usually wonder, we are talking about 307 cases while we are still standing there. They should be sending us those things to the newsroom. Why should someone read it? Why can't you even sign it down there that it is Mutai Kagwe? Hata kama tutasoma, hata kama tutajua ni wewe. There has to be sincerity in this thing.
Okay.
Well, politicians are politicians, and Mutai is one of them.
Okay,
he ran for governor. People should be sincere.
Okay, well, away from that, I'll use the president's words. I'll quote and say, let us reflect on the issues occurring on our social front. There is increased attention at the home setup. He captured gender-based violence, teenage pregnancies, violation of children's rights as key things that have been reported to be on the rise in the country at this time of COVID-19.
I hear that, but I would like to tell him, Mr. President, the problem is not COVID-19. The problem is failed leadership.
Okay.
If leadership fails, people find their own ways of doing the things that they do. Gender violence was still there. We have no statistic to show that in 2019, 5 women were battered, and now the 20 women are battered. It was still there. And we know that because we live in this country. People's depression. This country was in recession before COVID happened. Actually, it was very good for a government to have a COVID, because then you can blame everything else on COVID.
Right.
Yet it is a failed leadership that have caused the situation that we are in. There's somebody who was keeping, the other day they were sharing a meme that was showing the percentage of money collection from taxes that was done during Kibaki's time and during Uhuru's time. And it shows that during Kibaki's time, the budget was supported almost 90% by local collections.
Right.
Today, the local collections support hardly 35% of the budget, which means you are borrowing so much to be able to bridge the gaps. We have real issues. And depression, gender violence, social breakdown, whatever he's talked about, happens when people don't have a stable economic status. And this COVID has just come to really complicate, and that's why I keep saying, let's open up, let's people get back their jobs, let's observe the Ministry of Health guidelines, because how long are we going to lock ourselves? We lock ourselves to death. It doesn't make sense. God has created us to be more creative than just locking ourselves so that we can die because of something that is out there.
Speaking of which, he said, you know what, the current currency that we can pride in is in the ideas, and called upon the youth to come out with the creativity or creative ways of coming up on, towards ensuring that we have policies and ways of reviving the economy. But I'll go back to this point, and equally again quote him. He says, family is a projection of the nation. So when Alex here says that it is the leadership that has failed, well, we would want to acknowledge that. But does it mean also the family unit has failed, that the family unit was absent until now that COVID has brought us together? And then, yes, we are out here speaking of the ills that have been happening within.
The other week, I heard him blaming the provincial administration for the rise in pregnancy in
cases. Yeah.
Cases.
Some of the chief wataumia.
The chiefs should be around the states, taking care of our children, from not going from one place to another. Misinformation, Linda. Okay. That's serious misinformation.
Why?
I'd want to say that our children are idle at home. Their movements are not restricted, and school tends to keep a nation straight because you have a month or less than a month at home. So when you get home, you try to catch up. When you think of catching up, you're called back to school.
Right.
So schools have been controlling us. There is also depression in the country. We had depression before, in terms of economy and in terms of mental health. COVID has given us a reason that we should be depressed because of COVID. You know, last time we were depressed because of the economy, but when COVID came, now we gave it. We took the reason from economy to COVID. You know, but depression has been there and it is still here. I want to differ with Alex. The cases of gender violence have gone up, either men or women, because you spend more time together, and you tend to have friction. More time. Those people who have made it past COVID will stay together forever. This was a testing time. Wow. And yes, and even and our children. If our children escaped vices, watu wanakunywa bangi, watoto wanakunywa bangi.
And then you ask yourself, zinatoka wapi hizi zimefichwa fichwa huko? Wanasema pombe ni take away sasa.
I know. You see kids going into the winery, into the wine and spirits shop, carrying alcohol into their houses. I don't say that alcohol is bad, maybe, but I'm saying,
is it good? All right.
For them,
for the stomach's sake, eh?
I don't take, so right. I can't speak for them.
Oh, all right.
So, the bang in the streets, the early childhood pregnancies. The president is right. Our children are pregnant. The violence because of what we have, our offices are closed, and we are so idle. But
I think the question you asked was whether the breakup of the family has been the major problem.
And actually now the president going to the National Crime Research Center, and they calls upon them to conduct whatever it is that they're going to conduct in terms of investigations, and look at the escalating trends and give us solutions, give us recommendations, give us advisory. Would they give anything better than what the family unit represents?
If you look at any study, psychological study in terms of a nation and the growth of a nation, it says that the nation is as strong as the family unit is.
Yes.
So when the family unit breaks up, And this has been going on over years, because family breakup and the way people live together did not start yesterday. It's been there. That's why I'm saying I'm questioning, looking for excuses for everything that is negative that has happened around
Remember,
this
this has
time,
been projected
and
globally
blaming this on this. Yeah. Remember the first person who came up with the whole issue of gender violence caused by COVID was Mwangangi, and that was in March, hardly 2 weeks into the coronavirus. What statistics do you have?
But there are also the projections that are there globally.
Thank you. Thank you. Have we studied? Do we have statistics in Kenya? Do we have? We don't. We don't have statistics of almost anything that is directed towards this.
Do you want us to rule out?
We're spending too much time. You see, as long as we spend time finding a reason to blame the societal issues, we'll never get a solution to that to society issue. Because if you blame COVID for gender violence, what are you saying? That people were not living together before COVID? That people are not fighting before COVID? That the man was drinking too much, that he wasn't coming home? What are you saying? What inference can you make out of it? Because the scientific is a scientific thing. So what is causing the increase? The fact that the man and woman lives in the same house now for longer. Hold on. So the best thing is to release a man to go outside and drink again.
So that they do not lose the family.
What are you talking about?
Okay.
You know, this is a statement you make, but what are you inferring from that particular statement? So a nation needs to go that, and maybe need to go back to God. Yes. It's not good for man to live alone.
That's right.
And that's why I make this being for him, so that he can balance him. Now, what you guys are saying is that when people live together in the same house for long, then they can't live together.
The friction is that they cannot live together.
They cannot live together.
Which again
it doesn't make sense.
Right.
It doesn't make sense to me. And I think it's a bigger study of what we do with ourselves. But I think the key thing for me is that as a people, we must start taking responsibility for our lives. If we go out there and we're supposed to do a specific thing that the Ministry of Health has told us to do, let's do it. Let's open up the economy. Let's schedule September to open up schools and have the necessary infrastructure.
As soon as September.
Why not?
Okay.
The students in Tanzania in school today, they're not dropping dead.
All right, speaking of which, when we go back to school, in the event that we go back to school, yes, the Ministry of Education says that we'll have to have our students go back to where they were. How quick can the ones who are expecting to sit for an examination catch up to be able to walk into an examination room with confidence that indeed they're going to perform?
If they're given something like moderation.
Okay.
Moderation is hope for people who didn't go to school like you. Moderation is hope for the nomads and the pastoralists, and moderation is for the people who are disadvantaged in the society. Our children right now are disadvantaged because they didn't go to school. They haven't gone to school for around 3 months.
Or 4 months, more than
5 months. Now, and also we have an opportunity also to move the exams up to next year. We are not dying, we are not going anywhere, and we'll be here. So let them move exams to April, to January, to where, and let them be prepared, and let the ministry, the government be prepared to moderate the examinations. And I am still saying this, there is no need for opening the schools. Yes. we are not going anywhere.
What is the rush?
What is the rush?
Are you sure you don't know the importance of timelines in the lives of someone, and in how activities run, and the fact that you can say, postpone these examinations to next year. Remember, next year also there are other examinations that were expected to be there.
After you are done with talking about timelines, let's talk about how sick we can get and how we can lose lives. It can be also a timeline to die.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, when we talk about opening education, I think it's also good for our listeners to understand that this also COVID has brought out the whole divide of have and have-nots.
Yeah.
Because the have-nots, my village mates in Wangige, in Kiambu, they are at home. They are not going to school. But the rest of the population, especially in Nairobi, they are all in school. They are all doing online. There are a good number of schools, especially the ones that use the British system. They are right now doing their exams for the semester, so they can close school. And they're going to close school in a week or two.
Yeah.
So which means that the people who are in school, so the people, the hoi polloi, and allow me to use that word this morning, are the ones who are suffering because they're the ones who are not going to school. Those that have our children, they are going on with school as if nothing has happened. They're doing their studies every day. They're doing their exams every day. So why would you want the people that we need to bring up continue to suffer? Open up the schools, let them go in. Now, these people are making a big issue about this exam situation. We closed the schools around mid-March, which means the schools had only 2 or 3 weeks to go for the first term. We've closed for 3 months now. Okay?
Yeah.
So if you open up in September, we just need to find a way to recover that. Schools are always closed in November. They're always closed in December. Which means we have 2 months to recover the lost 3.5 months already. So these exams can be done in January comfortably without anybody losing anything, without this whole issue of moderation. Exams as usual. Students at home must be encouraged to continue studying, to continue preparing themselves for the exams that are coming.
Now that you brought the issue of the discrepancies that we witnessed today, what lessons do we pick from what we are going through right now in future that we can make the best of the education sector, we can make the best of every other sector that we have today that is ailing and that we've noticed there is a problem courtesy of COVID-19?
Linda, let me just talk about government institutions. The government has a lot of money and they are pouring a lot of money and they are wasting a lot of money instead of improving the resources that we have, instead of improving the schools that we have. You know, we need our schools improved. And we are not asking, we are demanding because we have elected people to go to the office. Right now we are grappling with 100 pupils in a class. Right now we are trying now to complete the electricity network in the country. We are trying to take water to our schools. Our schools should be the basis of our development. We are brought up badly in our primary schools. So they should look at the primary schools, the health centers. When we were starting, you talked about our health centers trying to come up with beds so that we can accommodate this. We're living in a bandit economy where everyone is for himself. Our hospitals are just like other things, and our politicians even cannot go into our hospitals. They can't. And they are the ones making for us laws in Parliament. Why can't we have an improvement of the health sector, of the education sector, of food production in the country? It has given us a lot of loopholes. The country is affected just for 1 week, and the whole country is starving. You know, the government is. I heard Alex saying that the government cannot even afford to collect enough tax. Let me give you the numbers. The government collects 1.6 trillion.
In form of tax?
Yes, 1.6. The salaries of the government employees is 1.8.
So they take it.
So even the tax cannot cover the salaries. And what is the budget?
3.7.
2.7.
Well, say now 2.7. Initially it was 3.
Yes, the deficit is 1.1. We are borrowing 1.1 to pay the employees first and then to eat. You see, if we close the loopholes, Linda, and channel these things to preschool, primary school, high school, university, and make sure that we compare with the universities of the world, then we can be better people. We can come up with the treatment of COVID-19 and we can go back to the economy the way he is saying that we have to open the economy.
Speaking of going back to the economy, all right, yes, cessation of movement has been lifted.
Yeah.
Nairobi, Mombasa, I know you will appreciate that, but just
100%. I've been wondering why it was locked up.
Okay. So these movements, do you have any element of fear on, the movements that, the careless movements that are going to be made across and the dangers that it will pose to us?
Linda and my brother, have people been going to visit in Nairobi? The people who live in Nairobi, but they don't visit Nairobi.
Okay.
Because they're in their house.
They're in their house and that's it.
I want you to go to where the majority of Nairobians live, in the settlement areas. We call them settlement areas, Mukuru kwa Jenga, Karibangi, Kawangware, and those other kind of places that some of us go. There's no lockdown.
They have no idea of what a lockdown is.
They wear masks, but their living situation is such that social distancing is a story. The wall between my house and your house is an iron sheet. And my house has 10 people and your house has 8 people. So what social distance are you talking about? This is not social distancing. And that's where the majority of Nairobians live. So we need to visit these places so that we can know, even when we give very big sounding words of social distancing, what they mean. And I'm saying it is critical for us to understand that COVID-19 is not a joke. COVID-19 exists, and COVID-19 requires us to take responsibility.
And when you talk about that, we know very well that the borders were closed partially, and there was, that's a blessing of course, we can have cargo being transported across different parts. And there's been a stalemate, a total stalemate, and terrible occurrences at that level of the border. Trucks staying there for weeks and weeks without them getting a go-ahead. So in the event that we reopen and we allow the PSV to traverse different parts of the counties and the country, just how possible are we able to be disciplined enough? Remember, the president said that, you have to abide by what restrictions have been given. You have to test if you are using PSV and all these activities. Just how disciplined and how able are we to be able to achieve this? So moving forward, we can say that yes, now the economy is back rolling.
You said earlier that the president of almost inferred that Kenyans are not their own. And I want to reiterate that you and I are on our own. So we need to take care of ourselves.
Wow.
Linda, I deal with transport industry in some way, and I know that because of the scuffle that have been especially between Kenya and Uganda border and the testing and all that, the transporters' business have dropped by at least 60%. Anybody who moves cargo there
will tell you that.
It used to take a turnaround of 5-6 days. Now it's taking almost 15 to 20 days to get the truck back. So it does only one trip per month. And it's a big issue, and it continues being a big issue because there's a lot of politics around it. You remember the Tanzania border where some people are tested to be positive, only to go into Tanzania and be tested and they are negative. We've had my friend George Pombe Magufuli testing goats and coconuts, and they all became positive. Questioning the whole aspect of testing. Last 2 weeks ago, there was a very interesting situation in one transporter here in Nairobi. His drivers were tested in Mombasa, 10 of them positive. They came, the response team did not go and pick them. So the owners thought, what do we do? Since you're the only guy in the truck, you drive on. They went to Malaba, they were tested, they were negative. Entered Uganda and came back. We are on our own, but let's remember that this is a real threat for our nation, and let's take care according to what we've been advised. We are on our own. We don't forget that.
All right,
Linda. The opening up of the borders of Nairobi. I think the government made a very wise decision to lock out Nairobi from the rest of the country and Mombasa too. If you argue against that, then you want to tell me that it didn't help Eastleigh, that the lockdown for Eastleigh did not help.
Did it?
It did.
Okay.
The numbers went down immediately. So if we joked about opening Nairobi and spreading the disease from the center, the epicenter, into our villages, right now we would be grappling with a country red spot, hotspot in the whole country. So opening up or closing down of Nairobi was the best move ever because it managed to close us in here. And even when you talk about Mukuru kwa Jenga, there are things that we can't help. There are things that we can't get it right every time. Yeah. So opening up right now is because of the pressure of wananchi.
Okay.
And it might backfire. And it might be closed down. But Kenyans have to be brought to the table. Kenyans are reasonable people. And if we negotiate with them, they will see the reasons why we shouldn't do that. And the government has to come out clean. And it has to give us money.
All right, to proceed.
Not to eat the money alone.
All right.
4 million cup of tea. Yeah? We also need to drink that tea.
That is 4 million.
4 million baht. I need to drink it.
Gentlemen, thank you so much for your time. In 30 seconds, your parting shots as we call it Adi. It's Saba Saba, by the way.
Yes, it's Saba Saba. But we forgot about that, Matiba's thing. Kawangware was an epicenter and they had a lot of cases. The MP for the area, what is his name again?
Kawangware is Simba Arati.
Simba Arati asked that he be given a list of the people that were positive so that they can use the Nyumba Kumi to trace those people so that they can be able to help them in terms of containment, not to stigmatize them, but to be able to help be held. And on the day he asked for that list, the number dropped to 0.
Interestingly, no cases being reported.
No cases reported. Easily, he talks about easily. It's
maybe
true.
It's because there's no
as soon as it
testing
was
that
mentioned,
was
the cases dropped to 0. How?
They probably did not conduct testing.
They all got healed.
They all decided they're not going to conduct testing.
We locked down Old Town. It's all propaganda.
Actually, there's a report coming from Old Town that is also not so good. In terms of the numbers, it's just that it has not been projected. We can only say that they remain as rumor and speculation until, yes, the Ministry of Health talks about that.
I just want to take my 30 seconds and speak to my friends, my Kenyan brothers and sisters, that we are on our own. It's critical that we observe the situation. I have friends in Brazil, in Sao Paulo, and Marcio tells me they have been burying people in their localities in hundreds. And you know that now Brazil, I think, is the 5th country now in the world. It's the 4th country in the world in terms of deaths that are happening. So this is a reality. So those people who have preconditions, you are at a bigger risk. If they say if you're 58 and above, don't think they're just saying that we are old people. They're saying that I'm more vulnerable than you are, Linda. So I need to take care of myself even much more. Let's keep our distance. Let's do the things that the ministry is urging us to do, and I know the Lord will be with us. But let's open the full economy. Let's do business. Let's not kill ourselves with depression and hunger.
Your 30 seconds begin now.
He just took 30 minutes.
I realize that.
Now, I have 2 parting shots. One on the COVID-19, 2 on Saba Saba. One, I would want to say that the president is wrong in all his decisions that he made yesterday.
Okay.
All of them are wrong. And his advices are politically advising him because of the pressure. Now, 2 Kenyans should be brought to the table and we should all discuss and reason together how we can have food on the table. On Saba Saba, I have respect for our forefathers, Raila Odinga. I have much respect for Raila Odinga. Kenya is one of the biggest nations in Africa because of the democracy, the war that we have had in the country. I'm not a supporter of Raila Odinga right now. I'm on the other side. But I have much respect for Raila and company.
All right. Well, thank you so much, gentlemen. Alex Mwathi is an engineer, author, and political analyst, and also Edgar Koski, engineer and political analyst. Thank you so much for your time. Looking forward to another session, even as we await to see what will take stage or what direction the country will head. And we'll be here to ensure that we update you on the same. Up next, we'll be discussing matters as Saba Saba. We have a guest on board, and I'll be introducing him after this short break. So don't you go anywhere. Morning Cafe will be right back with more.
Hello viewers, how are you? And karibu sana to the throwdown. My name is Hamadi Murila, welcoming you to TV47. Today being Sunday, you know we have so much to do. We are going to do cooking, but I have a giveaway for you, our viewers, those guys that have been watching us ever since the show started. But I'm not going to take you back. We have a Meko for you to win. You can use that in your house. You can travel with it to picnics or wherever you wish to go to. Yeah, so you can use this Meko in so many other ways, and you can get it in a very simple way. You just need to answer one question. I think you watched I hope actually that you watched our show last week. I just want you to tell me, what did we prepare last week and what were the ingredients? You can send an SMS to 22047. You can do a small video on maybe of what you prepared. You can be doing the mail or whatever you can do, provided you show us what we prepared and the ingredients, and tag us on our social media handles on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter as well. So I'm Meko for you guys. Just a very simple question. What did you prepare last week and what were the ingredients? Try that out and see who's going to take this away. We are also going to announce the winner in our next show, probably, so that you can get to know who has been following this show from the day one and what we have been doing all along. So today we want to do something very tasty for your house. When I say for your house, I mean for everyone in that house, your children, anyone that can be found in that household at any particular time. And it's very easy. You want to do spicy potatoes. These potatoes are going to be done in a very nice way so that they're not just potatoes but potato wedges. So I'm going to chop them in a way that you can all see. Potato wedges, first of all, are not prepared like normal chips. Some people normally chop them in a way that they end up looking like chips. They're not supposed to be chips. Potato wedges, you realize the shapes are a little bit bigger and they're more yummier than the chips. So we're going to just slice like a whole life-size potato. I'm going to do this. So I think you can see just 4. I'm just doing this, just 4 pieces from one large potato. I'm going to do that. So we are done chopping the potatoes into wedges size. I think you can just have a look and see. They're not like chips. These are the best sizes for wedges. So to prepare these spicy wedges, we are going to have we have rosemary here. We have cubes, and then we have chili powder. We have turmeric here, which we're going to use to boil, maybe to blanch them. And then we also have curry powder and we have black pepper. And then the best of it all, we have salt, which is going to give us the taste that we need.
Times and also the events that are taking center stage, the events of the day, we look at them. And today is Saba Saba. And joining me this morning so we can discuss more on the Saba Saba day. And for us who've been here for ages, or at least years back, we all understand when we talk of Saba Saba what it's all about. It was a day that was full of activities, political activities, and civil society bodies on ground just trying to conduct activism to the highest of order. So you can almost relate, but times have changed and you realize that there's not so much of this activity. So today we want to know why, or if they are there, then what is this that is being done in a, more than, what would one consider a civilized way. So welcome on board, and let's get to understand some more about the Sabasaba celebrations right here in the country, as of course people commemorate about 30 years of it. And joining me is Deputy Executive Secretary and Programs Coordinator of Constitution and Reform Education Consortium, Kreko, right?
Yes, please.
Yes, he is the guest of the day, Joshua Changwoni. Thank you so much for your time.
You're most welcome, Linda.
And we go straight to it. First, before you tell us anything about Sabasaba, tell us about your institution and what it is that you do.
Yes, my name is Joshua Changwoni, the Deputy Executive Secretary, as well as the Programs Coordinator at the Constitution and Reform Education Consortium, Kreko.
Yeah.
Kreko is a non-organization founded on the premise of championing for the constitutional reform in Kenya. We were founded in the year 1998, and we were the institution that brought together civil society organization to champion for democracy, good governance, as well as also the change for the constitution. We are more than 20 years in existence, and we've consolidated, put together the gains, the struggle for the reforms in this country.
What is your stand on the current talks of constitutional changes in the country today?
Democracy, provides for aspirations and citizens to talk about whether they need change or whether they need to safeguard certain gains. So people have a right to champion for certain aspirations.
Yeah.
But the aspirations must really be genuine. They must really promote citizenship in this country and not selfish in its nature. But it's unfortunate that politicians have taken center stage to champion their own selfish interests in disregard of citizens' interests.
Yeah. All right. So. Would you say that it's a noble move for us to keep pushing this now that, yes, the talk is on ground, and as much as we know very well it's not in the interest of the common mwananchi, but it is there, and the likelihood that it's going to be forced down or thrown. So what is the role of the common mwananchi? What is the role of civil society in ensuring that in the event that this sails through, then it will have sailed through capturing the interest of the people in a way?
Linda, citizens are the owners of this country.
Yeah.
This country would not exist if there were no citizens of this country. So citizens must really be on the forefront in the ownership of this country and managing its own affairs and ensuring that whatever goes on in this country is in the interest of the citizens. And therefore civil society have come to occupy that space where we take care of the interest of the citizens and connect, to those ones who have been put on leadership to manage the day-to-day affairs of, service delivery of the citizens. But to a greater extent, the citizens must always be very vigilant. Because we cannot say that once we do an election and we put people into office, that is the end of the game. The work starts immediately after an election, after declaration of results, because we would also want to see that what kind of service delivery, efficiency, effectiveness do we get from these people we put in office? Because do they go and champion their own interest or the interest of the ordinary mwananchi? Because we all pay taxes. We all put these taxes in the same basket.
We need value,
but we must get also a return of the value for this money that we put in the same basket in form of services and development.
And now that we're talking Sabasaba, the 30th anniversary, why do you think that this day is pretty much important for us as Kenyans to commemorate?
30 years ago, there were a group of leaders and citizens who came together and say enough was enough. We needed change, and the only guarantee for change was to widen the space for political discussions. And there was a call for multipartyism, and I remember it's documented that on 6th of July 1990 the same Kenyans who yearned for change recruited to say that we want to have a meeting in Kamukunji. And they were, because of we were under one party system, there were reprisals, there were arrests, there were harassments, and there were also threats, used by the state machinery to discard people who would want probably to have conversation for their future. And on 7th, the day of the meeting, it didn't happen. But that really catapulted, or it made people realize that they would also champion for their change. And that spirit lived on. And it led in 1991, I think December, when there was a repeal of Section 2A by the then President Moi to allow for multipartyism. Hence, the democratic space that we enjoy currently 30 years. But what is most important, the pioneers of the Sabasaba may not be there today, but the spirit still lives among us.
Would you confidently say that the spirits still live? I told you, I think I've had the privilege of seeing the activities of Sabasaba, across the country over the years, and I can tell you the steam is not as it was back then. So, are we trying to approach this in a more civilized way, or one would then be forgiven to say that maybe this died with the pioneers?
There are gains, with the spirit of the Sabasaba, and there are quite a number of examples that we have in this country. We might not necessarily even attach to it, but that spirit, that effort to say that this is possible to change. And a good example is the 2010 Constitution, the spirit of its change. I mean, the discussions, even with the defeat of the then proposed Constitution in 2005, is attached strongly to the Sabasaba. With the change of the Constitution and the promulgation of the 2010 Constitution in the year 2010, is as a result of Sabasaba. Currently, we have devolution. And like in the past order where we used to have the provisional administration, but you hear citizens now talk about, I would want to attend a public meeting as provided for the Constitution on public participation to decide which project can I allocate money so that it gives me a service that is nearer to my local village. So those are some of the gains, and it's highly attached to the spirit of Sabasaba. And of course, the current discussions to say that we would want order, stop the challenges of governance that we have currently, like corruption. Citizens coming in front to say that we must stop the looting. Looters must, be gotten out of our country. Those are some of the, gains.
What is this one key role of the civil society in advocating for good governance and responsible leadership? Because also we've seen at some point in time lots of fingers being pointed at the civil society as key distractors on most of the democracies across the world because of the kind of intolerance and unrest that that culminates from the push that is coming from them.
Like any other movement, even those ones that fought against colonialism in this country, they were not admired. My mom was not admired. And once you take a stand that probably disturbs the order in place, you will not be admired. So it requires a lot of courage to fight some of these forces. Civil society engage, in various ways to ensure that the interests of citizens are taken care of. Like for instance, we at CRECO, we engage institutions of governance on their responsibility in the discharge of their mandate to ensure that it is discharged as per the provisions of the Constitution. Because we have a Constitution which we not even implement. It's just 10 years old, and different segments of it. Such as, for instance, Article 10 of the Constitution on the provisions of the national values. Do we live with those by those values? Certainly. So we champion and try to monitor their implementation, because annually the president is supposed to give the state of the nation and the status of the implementation of the national values and principles of governance. But what do we see instead? Challenges, year after year. Cases of corruption, nepotism, tribalism, balkanization of the country along political loyalties, as we've seen currently on how what is happening in our Senate and the Parliament and the National Assembly.
All right. And I would want to know, what are some of the key things that the civil society is doing? What are these key things that they are doing towards ensuring that we uphold democracy, we work on our democracy and governance, including your very own institution or organization, and how best can Kenyans join in towards making these changes?
Thank you, Linda. We get involved in promoting civic engagement, civic education, as well as also political education. Even by mere telling people who are under 10 or 20 years old about Sabasaba, yes, they would get it in books. But the reading culture might not necessarily be as active as we would want to, to see. But the narrative. I mean, putting it into correct position to say that this is where we've come from as a country, and these are our aspirations. This is what our constitution provides for. This is how we need to live by the spirit of the constitution. We also engage in institutions of governance. I mean, there are quite a number of those ones that have been put in place to ensure that principles of governance are adhered to in our country, like for instance the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission, the Directorate of the National Values, just to ensure that we complement their efforts. Because those days, when there was single party regime, we didn't have that space. But now we have multipartyism. Now we have different platforms that we can engage with these institutions. So it's not the mode of confrontation with those ones who are in government, but to sit on the same table and chat way forward and say that how do we better offer services in this country of ours. And we also do engage in research to provide data, up-to-date data, and use the same data, to generate information that we are able also to put a clear picture of what is happening in our country. And more specifically on matters elections, or matters implementation of certain aspects of the constitution. Like for instance, we've had a provision in the constitution of the not more than 2/3 gender rule, which has never been implemented. But from time to time, we engage with institutions of government and stakeholders, as well as also citizens, to ensure that they are aware that even before we change the constitution, we've not even implemented our constitution.
All right, and critics of the civil society would argue, or they are arguing, that the society and the movements that we have in the country as of now are not capable enough, or are not in the best of shape towards ensuring that we are able to achieve the democracy that we've been yearning for in totality, or even transform society in comparison to the ones that were there in the 90s. Would you, in a way, agree with that or disagree with that? And if you disagree with that, why do you disagree?
Yeah, like in any other society, like for instance the civil society, they are dynamism. It's dynamic. So it's not like you wake up today, you say you'll find the same things and all that. So the environment in 90s is quite different from the environment we are operating in now. At that time, people operated from the trenches. People were in churches. People were in spaces they considered would not probably be reached out to with the government machinery, but they would be able to send their messages then. But now the space is there. So it's different. And of course, there are challenges that faces us. I mean, like for instance, infiltration into our sector, propagation of propaganda, just to ensure that we don't get a good name out there. For instance, they call us evil society to change the civil society, which is a narrative we know that have been used by those ones who feel the heat from the truth that we champion as a society. But with that, things have changed. Like now, for instance, we have digital spaces, which used not to be there. Civil society is very active there, providing information, interacting with citizens, because citizenry now are in social media. The youth, they are there, women are there. So the space has shifted. And of course, the yesteryears operating environment of civil society is not the same as now in terms of funding. There's diminishing levels of funding now, unlike in the past, of course, because of the global dynamics in terms of priorities of countries. And what we are doing as civil society organization is taking ownership cultivating local philanthropy, taking our own initiatives. And of course, I can tell you, Linda, for sure, people in civil society currently is not even like, for instance, it's just for jobs and all that, but it's just because of the spirit and the culture of saying that I would like to champion for human rights.
But we've also seen some of them who've probably caused this point where, the civil society has been painted, with a bad image or something of the sort, because then they hide in this name of a civil society or, human rights activist to fuel a regime change, to fuel the negative and the ills of the society. What are you people doing towards ensuring that you root out the ill or the rotten ones, so at least you maintain the good name of the civil society fraternity?
Yeah, thank you so much. And as I told you that there is infiltration, because civil society is a space where all citizens would want probably to put their word before even they go elsewhere. Yeah. It's like a safe place to say the challenges that faces all of us. But of course, interrogating some of these complicated issues that faces our society does not attract a lot of praise by those ones who are in power. So what they do in place, they machinate, a propaganda machinery to say probably we are safeguarding the interest of the donors, we are safeguarding the interest of people who would want to indirectly gain political power and all that, but that is not the truth. The truth is that civil society would want to see that everybody is embraced in this country, regardless of status, regardless of place of stay in this country, whether it's urban, slum, the rich and all that. But of course, the majority, of course, of our Kenyans are in the poor category. People who are voiceless. People who've never gotten to make informed choices. So, but you realize getting involved in such kind of spaces and breaking the norms, in terms of the political pillars of those ones who are aspiring for political gain, is not an easy job. So we must also be appreciated that we are dealing with a complexity that probably not any other person would want to deal with. It's not a very attractive subject.
Well, I would want to react and agree to that in a way. But anyway, that aside, we have the COVID-19 pandemic right here.
Yes, please.
And we know the effects and the changes that have come aboard in regards to the same, and the level of human rights violation activities that have been happening in the country. So what would be your message to the government in terms of the mitigation measures that they've put on board, and also the strategies that they've put on board towards addressing this pandemic and the issues that have cropped up in regards to human rights violation?
This pandemic has affected everybody in this country, government, civil society, citizens, anybody has really had a challenge with this pandemic. But of course, as the custodian of our resources, the taxes that we pay, and of course implementer of the policy regulations that we have, I think government needs, because this pandemic, the priority prevention is hygiene. And hygiene comes with the use of water. Water is not sufficient in this country. We would want to say those who are in urban areas, probably the people who would want to complain that the shortage of water, but everywhere in this country. You can imagine a woman down there in the village going about 5 kilometers to fetch water. So the availability of water in that homestead, even to wash hands and ensure that there is a high regard of hygiene, has to do with water availability. So my appeal to our government is to provide enough sources of water, regardless of urban, rural, or any other place that is there, because there is water shortage in terms of supply and even access. And then the other thing is that there are orders that have been put in place by the government. Some even extended yesterday, for instance, the 9 p.m. to 4 a.m. curfew. But this has come with its own challenges, because thugs have come, disguising as police officers. So probably would want to urge the government to have the police officers also be in uniform, so that when thugs go to raid, and they even knock on people's houses, citizens are able to identify, to say these are police officers, or these are government officials, because that has come with particular challenges. And then the other thing is, I think this responsibility of combating this pandemic should not be left to citizens. I think I could get from yesterday's presentation by the president. It's more of like, now you take your responsibility. Yes, responsibility lies with us, but of course there must be that custodian to say we are directing this particular order this way for the benefit of the common good. If we, for instance, say we must wear a mask, you must social distance. How have the ordinary citizen understood the importance of that? Is it only just by the radio that the president has said, or must take as a personal responsibility to say this is for my own common good? If I adhere, comply with this enforcement that is being done by the government. And I think lastly is that I think the combating of this pandemic, it should be a partnership. It should not be left alone to one entity. There must be full disclosure on the resources that are being deployed to the address of some of these challenges that we face with this COVID-19, because this can give a fertile space for corruption to occur. And without full disclosure of this, citizens will not have full trust of what is going on. But if we gain the trust, we are most likely to have a citizenry with faith of what is happening. And of course, as Kenyans, we must also take this as a value, to say, if I safeguard myself, I'm also safeguarding my neighbor, my brother, my sister, my parents, and any other person that is surrounding me, and even for our country. Because each country is facing this challenge.
True. And now that I had asked you about the Constitution and what you'd expect to be particular and precise on the BBI, what should we expect from the civil society, in the build-up to the coming, elections that we're talking about, and as we talk about a referendum?
Civil society, we believe strongly that tukitekeleza katiba tunaboresha maisha. If we implement the constitution, we are going to make our lives better. Because we have 10 years only since the promulgation of the constitution. It's only just that we've had challenges, because the implementation of certain sections, like for instance, devolution waited until 2013, so which means it's 7 years. But our position is the full implementation of the sections of the Constitution before even we talk about amendments. Even with the loopholes that we've witnessed, and because, as civil society, I know you acknowledge the dynamism of a Constitution and the fact that, you can change it for as long as it's going to be changed to suit the interests of the people. So in as much as we'd say we're 10 years into it, but we acknowledge that there are loopholes within this current Constitution, why should we proceed and let it be the way it is, even as we push for implementation, knowing very well that at some point in time it is going to land us in more confusion or in more limbo? Yeah, we agree, because the same Constitution provides Article 255, 256, 257 for its amendment. So people who would want to champion for its amendments have a right to do that. It is a democratic right. But as they have the democratic right to champion the same, but should not be selfish. The way we see now, because the perspective that we see from these discussions by politicians, it's more of like sharing political seats in the upcoming elections. But no one even talks about, for instance, the implementation of the not more than 2/3 gender rule is not even primary in this. So we see motives that are not genuine in that, but we must not stay just because Article 255 provides for the amendments of the Constitution just to let politicians take over in disregard of the aspirations of the citizens of this country. So as civil society organizations, we are watchdogs. We are taking stock of all discussions that are happening in this country, and ensuring that the spirit of Sabasaba does not die.
Okay. So what is your message on this Sabasaba Day to the people of Kenya?
Yeah, my message is that tutekeleze katiba, tuboreshe maisha yetu, na sisi kama wananchi, citizens of this country, we must be the owners of this constitution, the affairs of our country. We are the ones who are paying taxes. We must also ensure that we are our brothers and sisters keeper in wherever we are, and we should not be divided by the political class.
And parting shots for this particular discussion that we're holding right now, because Kenyans are eagerly waiting. And you tell us, why is it that we do not have these activities that used to be there during Sabasaba? I remember there are times even you were allowed to be away from school during Sabasaba.
Linda, you're right to say that probably they might not be very pronounced because at that time, it was making news.
Yes.
But as even for this day, there are quite a number of activities that are being organized by civil society. Like as we speak, even now, there is a Limuru 30-year celebration. We have a convention currently ongoing in Limuru. We have Mutari forums ongoing in different parts of the country, like Kibra. We have civil society engaging in digital platforms. So the social media, and all that probably because of many activities that we are seeing currently, it might not necessarily be making prime news as it used to be before. That so and so, like for instance, Charles Ruby and Matiba has been arrested and all that. So we are also in the space of supporting a lot of work around public interest litigation, and you must have seen civil society activists going to court. Previously, we used not to have a favorable court where civil society would go because the court was in the arms of the executive at that time. But now we have at least an independent judiciary that probably when we go there, we are able to be heard, and we have a belief that fair judgment can happen in that particular. So you see a lot of civil society organizations have gone into those spaces, and it promotes, the implementation of the constitution, because at least if we didn't exist, you can imagine the mutilations, you can imagine the kind of the happenings that would have happened in this country, because we complement each other with the media. Because the media and civil society are partners. We are complementary actors in educating Kenyans, watchdogging, and as well as also informing.
Okay. All right. Now that you talk, I gather this, that from the way you have crafted the sentences and the message, is clear and evident that there's some level of displeasure on these talks of changing the constitution as it stands right now. So, acknowledging the importance of the civil society in ensuring that the constitution that is at hand is implemented, would you say that in this case you have failed? Because 10 years into the 2010 constitution, I mean, it's very little year, very little years, so to speak, for one to get to see that indeed a constitution has been highly implemented or well implemented. Why is it that so soon we are having a conversation on changing the current constitution, yet we have the existence of civil society and they've not been able to convince the government or the people otherwise?
This is a struggle, Linda, and a struggle always has its own challenges. When the constitution was promulgated, there were several provisions on its implementation, including the defunct Constitution Implementation Commission. You remember the Nyachai Commission? We've had the NCIC, the National Commission on Cohesion. We've had the EACC, to play different mandates. Remember, in the same constitution, in as much as providing for civil society liberties as well as also practicing, specific responsibilities of the implementation of this constitution heavily relied on institutions of governance that were provided by this constitution. So civil society has been monitoring, and monitoring implementation of the constitution is not loud, that can be heard. Hence now the perception that civil society is nowhere. But there's a lot of work that civil society have done in terms of documentation of the roadmap of the implementation of this constitution. And the data, documents are available, but we've engaged governments at different levels, at the county level and at the national level. But in terms of pronounced to say that probably this is what we've done, might not necessarily be very attractive. Hence now the active messaging by propagandists to say that civil society have nothing to do, that those are people who have nothing to do. But when you look at the response, and of course I would give you an example in the health sector. You will for sure agree with me that the greater percentage of provision of that service is heavily complemented by the civil society, the NGO sector, with resources that they deploy towards
you will be brought back to this court on 14th.
Which begs the question, what is the other thing that civil society does?
Only that in the governance spectrum, it is seen as if probably politicians have taken the center stage, as opposed to, to those days when we would say, and of course, to some extent, people have transitioned. the faces behind the civil society of 1990s have now transitioned into government. We have, and of course, they are effecting certain changes there while they are actors of government. The non-state actors now remained on the other side. We are in discussions, and those discussions are contributing towards certain results that probably may not make headlines in this country, but we know that they are contributing towards certain steps for the betterment of the lives of this of the people of this country.
At what point ever can the civil society meet to work with the government of a certain nation towards ensuring that the people are able to get what it is that they are supposed to get, in terms of service delivery, in terms of upholding the rule of law, in terms of justice? Because many a times we've seen them taking parallel directions, and if this is always the case, then I'm afraid we might not be successful so much so in attaining some of the key things that I've mentioned.
In as much as there are areas that we disagree with government, but there are quite a number of areas that we agree, and more specifically on things that we know that involve around service delivery. For instance, deployment of resources to counties by the national government. Civil society have come out very strongly in terms of watching, implementation of devolution in this country, in terms of even doing budget tracking to ensure that whatever the national government promises, the 47 county governments, is really implemented to the latter. But it's not just mere pronouncements to say that we are putting these resources to the county governments. And of course, we even follow, because we have county-based civil society organizations that normally track budgets, involve citizens to participate in public participation and prioritize projects. As you alluded to say that probably we are not seen to working to promoting certain good things that are happening in government, but there's quite a lot. Like for instance, monitoring the implementation of national values in this country. So we produce shadow reports. When the president produces his State of the Nation report, civil society also produces the shadow report to inform that this is the track that we've come from. And these are the areas of the improvement. And we've seen progressively on certain segments where government have taken into consideration some of the recommendations that we make out of our own findings. And we appreciate that.
Which is commendable, I must say. Joshua Changoni, thank you so much for your time. He's the Deputy Executive Secretary and Programs Coordinator, Constitution and Reform Education Consortium, CRECO. It was great having you this morning. Where are you going to commemorate this day, apart from here now, the Sabasaba?
Yeah, I'm going to Limuru to join my colleagues who are there, because we have events full of,
but no social gatherings.
No social gatherings. Of course, we are adhering to that, the norms and prevention of the COVID-19. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for your time. And equally, thank you so much for keeping us company right from the word go up until now. It's time that we say kwaheri right here from me and the Morning Cafe team. We get to see you again tomorrow, same time, same place, for more on, of course, what is happening in the world of news. My name is Linda Alela. Do enjoy the rest of your viewing. Kirobi is up next with Matukio Mtambuko.